It's Kamala Harris. That is Joe Biden's pick for vice president because apparently he was still in some sort of induced coma when he decided to make this pick. I do not see the logic behind it. It makes no sense to me. It is a pure play for Twitter blue checks and for the historic veneer. That's all this is. And all the headlines today are black woman nominated for VP. That's all he was looking for. The problem is that she is not a good candidate. She's a very, very bad candidate. She has a ton of vulnerabilities. Not only that, she has gone after him personally. She said, for example, that she believes accusers that Joe Biden made them feel uncomfortable. Right? She believes his sexual harassment accusers. This was Kamala Harris last year, guys. Last year. Does anyone have a memory longer than that of a guppy? Here is Kamala Harris last year.
I believe them, and I respect them being able to tell their story and having the courage to do it.
Do you believe that the vice president should enter this race?
He's going to have to make that decision for himself. I wouldn't tell him what to do.
She was calling on him. I mean, that's her telling him to leave the race, isn't it? And that's who Kamala Harris is. And yet he picked that. Get a food taster, Mr. Vice President. Get a food taster like ASAP. ASAP. Now, you'll also remember that Kamala Harris was the delightful type of person who had suggested that she would ban fracking, that she would get rid of your private insurance, that she would get rid of plastic straws. She said that she could ban assault weapons by executive order in open debate. She has said in public amicus briefs that the freedom of religion should basically be reserved to the private sphere. That is a thing that she has absolutely said. And she is a disaster area. She's a disaster area. And yet, the media love her. They're going to treat her with kid gloves. Now, here's the thing. They didn't love her when she was running. As soon as she dropped out, then they were like, oh, man, isn't it sad that Kamala Harris is gone? She's awesome. We're going to miss her, aren't we? Well, yeah, no, nobody missed her, but she's back anyway. Is she a radical? You bet your ass she's a radical. Here's Kamala Harris comparing ICE to the KKK.
I do not see a parallel between what is constitutionally mandated as it relates to enforcing the law.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
I see no.
Are you aware that there's a perception
that puts ICE in the same category as the KKK? Is that what you're asking me?
No, I'm very specific about what I'm asking you. Are you aware of a perception that the way that the discretion
I see no parallel.
I'm not finished.
I see none.
I'm not finished. Are you aware that there's a perception that ICE is administering its power in a way that is causing fear?
I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing. So she compared ICE to the KKK, and then she was like, well, I'm not saying that they're like that, but are you aware that there are people who are afraid of ICE? Also, she backs illegal immigrants receiving Medicare, so that's an exciting thing. So everybody's health care should be paid for by the American taxpayer, including people who are here illegally. Here was Kamala Harris saying that to Jake Tapper.
Every individual who is a resident of the United States is entitled to benefits for health care services under this act. Not every individual who's a citizen, but every individual who's a resident. Mm-hmm. So you support giving universal health care, Medicare for all, to people who are in this country illegally?
Let me just be very clear about this. I am opposed to any policy that would deny in our country any human being from access to public safety, public education, or public health, period.
Also, she backs 70% tax rate. So if you think that the tax rates where you live are already too high, wait until you get a load of Kamala Harris endorsing AOC's 70% top tax bracket. This is something she did on The View when Meghan McCain asked her about it.
And she's promoting policies like saying that every single carbon emission in the country, every car, should be eliminated within the next 11 years, everything from a 70 to 80% tax rate. Do you agree that she could possibly, in this ideology of the socialist left, could splinter your party?
No. I think that she is challenging the status quo. I think that's fantastic. I think that she is introducing bold ideas that should be discussed. And I think it's good for the party. I frankly think it's good for the country. Let's look at the bold ideas.
Let's look at those bold ideas, like 70% tax rates. By the way, she was a Senate endorser of AOC's Green New Deal resolution, was Kamala Harris. And that's putting aside the fact that she's an unbelievably incompetent campaigner. I mean, incredibly incompetent. It's also putting aside the fact that she's routinely and viciously Machiavellian. Remember that time she went after Brett Kavanaugh? So there are a few things she did during that Brett Kavanaugh hearing that were just despicable. And during the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, she literally presented Republicans with a letter signed by a woman named Jane Doe, alleging that Brett Kavanaugh raped her in the back of a car. There were no details. There was no explanation of who the woman was. There was no way for them to actually pin down any of the allegations. Harris just passed along that letter. Washington Times reported that. Also, she questioned Kavanaugh in the most nasty possible fashion. I mean, she was awful during the Kavanaugh hearings, lest you forget. Here was Kamala Harris trying to make a name for herself during the Kavanaugh hearings.
The only difference is that you have been accused of sexual assault. How do you reconcile your statement about a conspiracy against you with the treatment of someone who was before this body not very long ago? Do you agree that it is possible for men to both be friends with some women and treat other women badly? Did you watch Dr. Ford's testimony?
I did not. I plan
Thank you.
to. I plan
Thank
to.
you.
I mean, she was just awful, just an awful person, just an awful person. And she does not underscore Joe Biden as nice guy. And she is waiting in the wings, and everybody knows she is waiting in the wings. So, honestly, if I were Trump and I had Biden in a debate, I'd basically just dismiss him. I would. My strategy would be pretty simple. Joe Biden gets up there and he says, "Don't worry, you're trying to malign me as saying I'm getting rid of Social Security and I'm radical. I'm not. I'm old Joe Biden." And if I were Trump, I would say, "I'm not worried about you. I don't think you're going to be around for a second term. I'm worried about your VP." I'd say it straight out. That's what everybody's thinking. The only reason anyone cares about Kamala Harris is because everyone assumes Joe Biden is not filling out 2 terms. And I think they are correct in this assumption. 59% of Americans, according to new Rasmussen polls, think that Kamala Harris will end up as president if Joe Biden is elected. Within the first term, not within 2 terms, within 1 term. Okay, she's a radical. She is extraordinarily incompetent. She opens up so many avenues of attack for the Trump campaign. They must be just salivating at this point. This is a lady who tweeted back in April of 2017, quote, "An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal." She said we should decriminalize border crossings, by the way. And if you think that Trump is going to lay off of Kamala Harris's start in politics, namely the fact that she originally got a career boost by being the girlfriend of Willie Brown, you are wrong. Donald Trump ain't going to lay off that for one single solitary segment. Not for a second. Not for a second. I mean, if you didn't know that, Tiana Lowe writes for the Washington Examiner. She points out that Willie Brown, who spent a quarter of a century as the de facto royalty in California, he was 3 decades as a member of the California Assembly and 8 years as mayor of San Francisco, once carried out an open extramarital affair with a young prosecutor named Kamala Harris. When Harris was 30, she began dating Brown. He was in his 60s. Brown was married at the time. Also, according to reporting from the San Francisco Weekly, aside from handing her an expensive BMW, Brown appointed Kamala Harris to 2 patronage positions in state government that paid handsomely, more than $400,000 over 5 years. In 1994, she took a 6-month leave of absence from her Alameda County job to join the Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board. Brown then appointed her to the California Medical Assistance Commission, where she served until 1998, attending 2 meetings a month for a $99,000 annual salary. So, do you think that Donald Trump leaves that stone unturned? Does that seem like your style? Does that seem like your style? I think not. I have serious doubts. Meanwhile, there is a lot of news on Kamala Harris's long cop history. So the left really is not fond of Kamala Harris because some people on the really hardcore progressive left see her as too harsh in her prosecutions. Reason Magazine has good coverage of this. Reason Magazine pointed out this back in June of 2019. During her 28-year tenure as a county prosecutor, district attorney, and state attorney general, Harris proved quite willing to live up to the epithet that she was a cop. In the public eye, she spoke of racial justice and liberal values, bolstering her cred as one of the Democratic Party's rising stars. Behind closed doors, she repeatedly fought for more aggressive prosecution, not just of violent criminals, but of people who committed misdemeanors and quality of life crimes. Over and over again, Harris went beyond the call of duty, fighting for harsher sentences, larger bail requirements, longer prison terms, more prosecution of petty crimes, greater criminal justice involvement in low-income and minority communities, less due process for people in the system, less transparency, and less accountability for bad cops. All of this according to Reason Magazine. They also point out that she was personally selected for her position at the California Medical Assistance Commission by Willie Brown, who was her boyfriend. And again, that was not the first time he had given her a lucrative state appointment, which is one hell of a way to enter public service. So she went back to San Francisco. She became a DA over there. And there, she apparently started arresting truants. She made a bit of a name for herself by arresting students and then trying to leverage them. According to Jim Garrity over at National Review, Harris pushed for a statewide law in California that lets prosecutors charge parents with misdemeanors if their children are chronically truant. We're putting parents on notice, she declared. If you fail in your responsibility to your kids, we're going to work to make sure you face the full force and consequences of the law. You'll remember this was a line of attack used famously by Tulsi Gabbard, the representative from Hawaii. In debates with Kamala Harris, Harris had no answer whatsoever. Harris has been a strong advocate of civil asset forfeiture, which is a bill that would have allowed prosecutors to seize assets before they even initiate criminal proceedings. As San Francisco District Attorney, Harris created a program called Back on Track. The program received $750,000 in federal funding, but faced criticism because an illegal immigrant who pled guilty to selling drugs was selected and graduated from the Back on Track program, only later to grab a woman's purse and run her down in an SUV, severely injuring her. So there is a lot of dirt on this lady, like a lot of dirt on her.